they become our allies. But to do that, a catastrophic event like this, or what we've already been able to defeat at other levels, educates that population to where they're like, well, maybe it's not all doom and gloom, or maybe we shouldn't allow extremists to turn around and manage every single thing because they say it's wrong and somebody else science-based says it's right. We have the opportunity to plant our flag in the soil on this, Jonathan, and say enough is enough. And if the conservation-minded sportsmen and women around the state and around the region and around the country would help support this, we can thwart these efforts here. We can drive a stake through the chest of Dracula, and we can make sure that other states have the playbook and the roadmap to capitalize on our efforts here. Because if we can stop them here, I guarantee you can stop them anywhere.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. I have a fantastic guest for you guys. I'm super excited. Dan Gates, he is an outstanding individual. He's out there fighting the hard battles that we have as conservationists, as hunters, anglers, people that enjoy having the rights to go out and hunt big game, whether it be anything from predators to prey animals and everything in between. Definitely you want to tune into this, guys. If you want to get in on the action between him and the organization HOWL that I've had on the podcast as well, definitely check out the links down below, guys. I want you guys to be able to get in, even if maybe you can't necessarily give your time. Do everything that you can to give of your money, if you can give donations, or reach out to Dan and see how you can best help fight the good fight. So with that being said, the links are down below. Check those out. And honestly, guys, outside of that, if you are in need of any gear, definitely go check out blackovis.com. Right now is the time to get dialed in on your gear, everything between your archery equipment, your rifle equipment, your boots, your clothing. Get out and test it during the spring, your tents, your sleeping gear, all of that. Go check it out at Black Ovis. And of course, if you're in the market to live better and more healthy, First Phorm's got you covered as well. Guys, invest in gear, but also invest in yourself, your body, your nutrition, everything that you need so that you are limitless in the mountains or wherever it is that you're traveling. You're not being held back by your fitness level, by your nutrition, by your gut health, etc. Definitely check that out as well down below. Every time you guys use the links and the codes, it helps support the channel, and I really appreciate that. So with that being said, guys, let's get into this podcast with Dan Gates. Definitely check out the links that he is going to provide. Listen in on the information, why it's super important to get in and help with conservation with your actions or donations or both if you have it available. Let's get into this podcast with Dan. Welcome back, everyone, to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. This has been a long time coming. We've been talking with HOWL. If you guys don't know about HOWL, I definitely recommend you check them out. I'll leave their link down below as well. But we have an amazing guest for you guys, Dan Gates, who is, and I'm going to have to read this because I don't want to get it wrong, but we got the executive director for Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. So that's a lot of words to say. Dan cares about the environment, cares about people being able to hunt, but also the animals that are out there and how we can best manage them in a responsible manner, not necessarily through a ballot box, but for people that genuinely care about how the animals are taken care of. So you've probably seen Dan on a couple other podcasts. This one we're recording in February, will be coming out probably April-ish timeframe, end of March when you're seeing this. So definitely go and take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. There's some things happening in Colorado that we're going to get into and how you can avoid that happening in your home state. If you're not in Colorado, definitely go help them over there, but also how you can avoid it in your home state and what to look out for. But that's just a little glimpse as to what we're going to get into. Dan, for people that don't know who you are, who are you?
Well, I'm a lifelong sportsman. I appreciate the opportunity, Jonathan. We have been playing a little bit of internet phone tag back and forth, and some of that's scheduling and some of that's just logistics. But I'm a lifelong sportsman. For 37 years, I've owned and operated a wildlife human animal conflict resolution business. It might be called an animal control business. We do pest control and we do general wildlife removal, and it's not all lethal. Some of it has to be because of a variety of different circumstances. I'm also the current president for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association and the executive director of CRWM, like you mentioned. It's an organization we formulated in 2017 in preparation for what we thought was the inevitable, and things that we had to work through to get to this point proved to be that we were right to make that decision when we formulated the organization. I sit on a variety of other boards and committees. I've been appointed by Colorado governors, none of which I voted for. I sit on, working groups and coalitions and roundtables, all that circulate a common message of parallel direction and intersecting points to make sure that wildlife management and the North American model of wildlife management and conservation are the key subjects of most of those conversations. And in today's environment, I think that it needs to be upheld, propped up, enhanced, promoted. And that's the mission of the organization, CRWM. It's to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. We are not a membership organization. We get donations and contributions from individuals, and we are a 501c4 tax-based organization. And to those people that don't know, if they're a member of most of the other conservation-minded groups, they're a C3, and so they can do things that when you donate, it's a tax-deductible contribution. If you donate to a C4 like us, or an issues committee, or some might consider us to be somewhat of a PAC, we do education and advocacy work, but we're the only organization in the state of Colorado that has had full-time lobbying representation for sportsmen and women in conservation efforts at the state capitol. And we've done that since 2017 when we hired our first lobbyist. That doesn't put us on a pedestal. That puts us in a position of relevancy and logistical planning to make sure that we're dealing with legislators on behalf of the organized efforts of many other coalitions that are part of our umbrella. But we just have the tax structure to be able to do some of the things that those other groups can't, or they don't have boots on the ground to be able to do so. And that brings up the other organization or coalition. I'm the vice chair for the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project, which is about 25 different organizations, most of which we're all members of in some capacity. And so it gives us a multifaceted approach and multiple arms to deal with things from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission to the Colorado General Assembly and the legislature. And now with what we're having to deal with this ballot initiative that would prohibit the harvesting of mountain lions and bobcats in the state. It's a hunting ban. And it escalates our position on the landscape pretty significantly, because we were the ones who first had the capabilities when the initiative dropped in September of last year. We were the only organization that was prepared financially and logistically to immediately drop the hammer and engage on those issues in a very short, restricted time frame, that if nobody did at that time, then the extremist opposition would have been able to do what they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted, and with what wording that they wanted. And so we were positioned. We got the team hired in 3 days. We got the attorneys. We got the strategy team. In a 2-week time frame, we were already in the court system with them. And we just recently got out of the court system with 2 different initiatives that they filed. We went through the Secretary of State, the Title Board, the Legislative Council, and ended up in the Colorado Supreme Court, which all of that cost money. And we didn't get what we wanted, but we got the best that was available that we could expect to get. And now the opposition is starting to gain and gather signatures in hopes that they can put this on the ballot, because they went through the appropriate measures of Colorado law, and we went through the appropriate measures that were given to us. And now we've helped set the tone and narrative. And we joke about this, but we considered ourselves to be in a 15-round title bout, and we've won the first 3 rounds. I think we scared the hell out of what maybe some would consider the champ. And we have more than a puncher's chance. We have a hell of a fighter's chance at this point in time.
That's amazing. That's a great overview of all the stuff that you've been doing recently, because it's I don't envy your position. You obviously know exactly what you're doing, but it takes a lot. It's a lot to wade through as far as any type of movement goes, and following all the laws, dotting your I's, crossing your T's. making sure that you're following the proper procedure, because if you don't, then things can get thrown out real quick in the courts. That's something that I've learned just because my wife works at a law firm, and they're very technical about verbiage and this and that and the other. So it's good that you know what you're doing. And so for people that don't know, I guess, about what's going on right now in Colorado, I don't know why they wouldn't know, but if they don't, I would really like you maybe to break down kind of what's going on there, so that people can understand. Even if you're on the East Coast and you don't care about mountain lions and bobcats and all that, you just want to hunt turkeys and enjoy the fun times it is turkey hunting. What is going on in Colorado right now that is such a pressing matter that you've been dedicating so much time and money to through your organization?
Well, thanks for the question. I would like to give a little bit of a historical background to it, just to show how we got to where we're at and why. This just didn't come out of the closet. This has been a work in progress for the opposition for quite some time. And for those that don't know, we had ballot initiatives that were left up to the voters of Colorado in 1992 with a spring bear hunting initiative, and it took bear hunting out of spring with no hounds, no bait, put it into a spot and stalk season for the fall. In the 96, the antis came back again at that time. It was Sinapu, which was eventually then Wild Earth Guardians. And they took, through a constitutional amendment by a very slim margin, they took the recreational trapping away with foothold traps, body gripping devices, and cable restraint devices. And then we kind of held the wolves at bay, pun intended, until 2020. And then the same type of individuals came back with another ballot initiative to reintroduce wolves on the Colorado landscape through a voter initiative. Wolves are on the landscape in many other states, but not through the general public's ability to be able to turn around and check a box. That's ballot box biology. And so we lost that by a lesser margin than what we lost the amendment to the Constitution back in 96 on the trapping deal. By about 1.9% is what we lost in 2020. And I say we lost as a state, but not all of us engaged at that particular level, because we were fighting many other things that were going on through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and the legislature. And while I was fortunate enough to be selected to sit on the stakeholder advisory group to build a wolf management plan, I didn't actively engage in the wolf ballot initiative because our organizations were collectively fighting many other things and winning. We were defeating the activists and the extremists on their agendas at many other levels from 2018 all the way up until just recently in 2022. And we beat them at other levels at this Colorado Legislative General Assembly in the legislative session of 23. That kind of gives a little bit of a background to some of the demographics of how things changed. But in September of 23, the animal extremists came and didn't like our victories in 19, 20, 21, and 22 through those Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commissions and through the General Assembly. So they decided to take their losses and try to turn them to gains by running a ballot initiative to ban the harvest of mountain lions and bobcats. They call it trophy hunting. But through the measures that we went through that I discussed about Supreme Court and Title Board and so forth, we got trophy hunting out of the title, but it still remains in the ballot language. So it's the measure itself. And the scary thing about that, Jonathan, is if you read the title, it's confusing enough to the average person to go, what does this actually do? But if you read the measure language, which will be defining a statutory definition of what trophy hunting is, it'll actually be read something to the effect of trophy hunting means, or is defined as intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, and trapping and pursuing a mountain lion or a bobcat. And I'll throw in lynx as there as well, even though we can't harvest lynx in the lower 48 because they're federally and state protected. But it says lynx, and they're preparing for if lynx ever became delisted and the populations anywhere were reasonably enough grown that they didn't want any harvest of lynx down the road in any way, shape, or form. What people need to realize is it's not about a mountain lion or a bobcat issue, even those are the two low-hanging fruit that the extremists decided to put onto the initiative. The definition of trophy hunting in the language is the definition of hunting. It's in intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping a mountain lion or a bobcat. And there's not a place in the country that we can find that has a statutory definition of trophy hunting. And we have wanton waste laws, we have poaching laws, we have all sorts of things. But the definition, the way they've written it, if it's actually voted on and if they're actually successful, it'll be easily transferable to any state or any species or even on the federal side, because a precedent would be set and they could use that as a catalyst to launch themselves to another level. So you could take mountain lions or bobcats out and put turkeys if you really wanted to, or put bighorn sheep. And to that point, there was an article that came out last year in the Colorado Sun, Trish Zornio, who's somewhat an animal extremist herself, in the headline said, "Why are bighorn sheep any different than mountain lions?" Well, they're already setting the table. Why are you killing the state animal? They're already setting the table. They already set the table to where if they're so effective in getting their false message across, their lies and their deceit across to the general public, where do you think they're going to go next? And if you read some of the other provisions into the language, and it's worth mentioning that they don't want us to use hounds for anything. They specifically say that. They don't want you to use electronic collars or tracking devices because that's unfair. Even when we explained to the title board, and even though the message went through the Secretary of State and the Supreme Court, that the utilization of tracking collars was for the safety of the hounds and for the logistics of the houndsmen, and to keep the hounds in check on private and public property or private property they didn't have access to where you knew where your dogs were going. This is not 1920 or 30 where your dogs could just roam, wherever the hell they needed to go. Not to mention the fact we've got game management units to where if you were pursuing a hound, pursuing your hounds that were pursuing a bobcat or a mountain lion in close proximity to the boundary, and that lion crossed that imaginary line on the map into another game management unit where the quota had already been filled, there was no way to be able to keep your dogs from even knowing where they were at, let alone keep them from going that direction. So they act like that we are using cruel and inhumane, unfair chase tactics. And if people read the language, these could easily be transferred into upland bird dog hunting, waterfowl hunting, because we all use tracking devices or training devices on our dogs. The statutory definition and the utilization of different tools underneath of this guideline could be prohibited not only in Colorado, but contiguous states, or maybe even broader, depending on how much traction they gain here, or how much influence or enthusiasm that they get, that they just change a few words and they try it in California, or they try it in Arizona, or maybe try it in Texas, or maybe in Mississippi, just thinking that, well, just like what they did here, it's a mountain lion and bobcat deal. If you read the language, it's not. If you read the language, it's not just a Colorado deal. It's where Colorado voters can vote on it now. But if Colorado voters are deceived and lied into, given a smoke and mirrors campaign to vote the direction that the extremists want them to, I'm fearful of where we'll be 15 years down the road, and I might be dead and gone by then. I'm fearful where we'll be when other people decide to prop up their flag when 2 or 3 other states have already fallen, and everybody goes, if we would have stopped this in Colorado, we wouldn't be dealing with it in Nebraska or in Tennessee or in Indiana. And that's where we're at today. So we're just trying to make sure that we build up our resources, build up the education campaign, get people to understand that this is not a Colorado issue. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute.
Yeah. And I mean, what I want people to understand is basically, I mean, you've got a wildlife division, whatever it's called in your state, DWR, DNR, whatever. You have people that are, their sole job and responsibility is to make sure that the numbers are good for management of those animals. So what's happening here is people, basically big city people, that think cougars are nice and cuddly and bobcats are these cute, fuzzy little creatures, and whatever animal else they choose. Because if they think they're cute and cuddly and fuzzy, them and wolves and all the predators, of course they're going to think that elk behind you is cute and cuddly, right? so it could definitely bump to that, and it's not an extreme idea to think that way. And I want people to understand, this isn't the DNR that's trying to, with numbers showing, hey, we actually don't have enough cats in this area, so we probably shouldn't hunt them. That's not what's happening. It's people that think these animals are cute and cuddly and want to put it to a ballot to people that, don't take offense to this, people out there, but you're uneducated if you're voting for this, because you don't understand how wildlife works if you're voting for this at a ballot versus going to your DNR and dealing with it through them that actually have biological numbers rather than just pictures of cute, cuddly, fuzzy creatures. That's really what's happening. I mean, and to dumb it down even further to my level, that's really what is happening. Is these people have these stuffed animals and they think that's what the wildlife is, and it's not at all what should be happening. So,
well, there's a component to that too, Jonathan. That there's a term out there that the antis use that he's even picking up some steam from some of the middle of the roaders, the unknowing public, about rewilding, about a 30 by 30 initiative where you turn 30% of the landscape back into conservation by 2030, and then a 50 by 50 initiative, a federal initiative that you turn 50% of the land back into conservation by 2050. Well, that's fine and dandy.
What I would like to know is which politician's given up their second and third homes for that.
Well, yeah, and who's coming off of the landscape, and what utilization and conservation efforts are being bastardized to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
Because if you really get into it, and I'm a staunch believer that this is not a Black Hawk helicopter conspiracy theory. I think it's intentional that when you allow predator-prey base balances to be unmanaged, in my mind, inappropriately by science-based wildlife managers, like what we've got in Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I mean, there's 350 some odd wildlife biologists, scientists in our agency. We've got over 1,000 employees. There's some states that don't have 350 employees in their game management agency. We have parks and wildlife. But when you have 350 scientists, I might not agree with every single thing that they do or what they say. We might have some consternation about some of the direction they want to go on different things, but they're doing a lot of it, and we provide some anecdotal information, or maybe it's boots on the ground experience. Maybe it's just footwork that we've created from our community. I'd much rather have them deciding the fate of our wildlife than somebody that's driving an Uber. No offense to people that drive Ubers. Somebody that is a grocery store clerk, or somebody that takes tickets at the Bronco game. They might have an opinion about something, but they don't have the facts and the data to turn around and do that. And I don't want those people voting on how we should do brain surgery or vasectomies or working on diesel pickups, and trying to convert us to electric motor. I don't think that people are stupid enough to honestly say that we want to take not the stupidest people, not the dumbest people, the most ignorant people to make our science-based decisions. And I say ignorant because ignorance means that you don't know.
Yeah,
stupidity means that you know and you don't care, that you're going against the grain, you're going against the facts and the data and the science. People can be educated about, why don't we treat our lawns this way? Why don't we do this with our gas vehicles? Why do we need water quality? They need to be educated about all that stuff because it's not in their wheelhouse. They might have an opinion, they might have a perspective, but fallacies and falsehoods and lies and deceit should not govern our wildlife management and our natural resources conservation.
Yeah. And when, you mentioned that group of individuals of ignorance, and I make it very clear, even with my kids, there's a distinct difference between ignorance and stupidity. I can handle ignorance because that's my job to, in this case, teach my kids. But once I've taught you something, maybe once, twice, 3 times at the most, at that point, you're being stupid, making a wrong decision because you've been educated. So people, out there, don't take offense to the ignorance, but like if you are ignorant on something, accept that and go learn about it, or don't vote. That's kind of how I handle my own situations. Is when people bring stuff to me and I'm like, honestly, I can't speak on that topic because I have no idea, and I don't want to look stupid or put my foot in my mouth. because it's the cool thing to do. There's the same group of people that's getting their news from TikTok and things like that. It's a 7-second, I think it's even shorter now. I think it's like a 5-second is the attention span of most individuals. Go ahead.
That brings up so I'm involved in a couple different things from a appointed position, and some of that has to do with messaging. And I was just told about 3 years ago that our attention span is like 1.7 seconds. For us to recall something, we need to see something 5 to 7 times for more than 3 to 5 seconds. But if our attention span is 1.7 seconds, it's pretty easily defined that you can maybe remember what you saw to some degree, but you don't know the context of it until it's been browbeat into you through exposure and saturation. And so when you stop and think that the average brain works in 0.7, but you can only retain something for 1.7, but you can't recall what you retained because you didn't see it over and over and over. That's where I'm concerned about somebody, about water, about climate, about clean air, about wildlife, about natural resources, about oil and gas, you name it. I mean, it could be a variety of different things that we have to vote on or that we're concerned about on the landscape. But we have to be able to figure out a way to provide information to a user group, a target audience that is somewhat in the middle of the road. They might be between 18 and 44 years old for the most part, and you can go above that and below that, but who cares about below it right now because they can't vote. They'll be able to vote. We need to make sure that they're cognizant of an ongoing message, but we shouldn't spend money on that group right now because we're concerned about the voting public. We're concerned about the ones that are making decisions now for those ones that can't vote. And we're concerned about talking to people that might be on the upper percentile of the age brackets to make sure that they fully understand the repercussions and ramifications or lack thereof of their actions when they turn around and go to the ballot and check the box.
Yep, exactly. And I'm in sales as my 9 to 5, and I've read enough books and seen it actually happen to where it's true. People don't even want to like click a link or take some action until they've seen something 5 to 7 times, and then it takes even more follow up after that for them to actually follow through and buy the thing. In this case, obviously, you're not asking for purchases, but you're asking for support and donations so you guys can go through and do all of the lobbying and even working towards the future. Because what's happening right now, and a good friend of mine, Dan Staten, with Elk Shape, which we need to get you on his podcast. He is very much about unity, being united, not divided, right? And we've got a problem in this industry, the outdoorsmen, where people that shoot shotguns don't think you should shoot a turkey with a bow, and people that shoot it with a bow don't think you should shoot it in the face with a shotgun, and people that shoot rifles think bow hunters are dumb, and bow hunters think crossbows are dumb. Like it's all of these stupid little infighting things. It's like the kids that are riding on a long car ride and they're like, "Mom, he breathed my air. Mom, he looked out my windows." Like, shut up. Like, we're on the same journey. Just go. Let's go together and either plug your headphones in and shut your mouth, or we should just head in the right direction. Like it's okay to kind of throw little jabs like, "Oh, Glock's better than Sig," or vice versa kind of deal. But
it sounds like you were in that car with the little kids, or you have little kids who are in the car.
Yes, both. I'm the oldest of 5, and I have 5 kids now. So yes, I 100%. I've experienced it as a parent and a child. And but that's what I compare these stupid infightings to. I'm like, the anti-hunters are so united because all they care about is that one vision of tearing down whatever it is that we have, rights, privileges, both combined as conservationists. It's the non-hunters that are being pulled because these people get so passionate, they're pulling them that way. And so that's what they remember when they go to vote. There's so much advertising, and you drive down in Montana and you see these like cute cuddly wolves, like, oh, I don't want those guys killed. It's like, well, have you seen one actually in the wild? Because they're pretty scary, like, and it's stuff like that. We need to have better conversations amongst ourselves, but also with the non-hunters that maybe brings a, I've had people that bring to me like, well, why do you kill animals? That's so savage. Why do you do this? And instead of getting offended, I'm like, it's a great question. Let's talk about it. Where are you hearing about, like, what are these ideas that you're getting? Is it from Disney or is it from actual experience? And we'll sit down and talk. I've had my kids also, they go to school and people ask if luckily we're here in Utah, so the majority of their parents either understand hunting or they go hunting themselves. But there are some kids that are like, oh, you eat deer meat? That's so mean to kill Bambi. My kids come home to me and I give them, tools to be able to have that discussion of, no, it's not that we're killing Bambi, we're killing Bambi's dad. But like, just
Huh?
but real conversations, not getting offended, not getting emotionally involved when people come at you emotionally, and having an educated discussion would be something that would help a ton with bringing the non-hunters over to our side, even if they don't hunt, to at least understand that hunters aren't just these weirdos that like to go in the woods and kill stuff.
Well, and because of the other boards and committees and so forth that I'm on, I get a chance to look at a variety of different perspectives because of the messaging that we try to create and what we do. And then also looking at the organizations that I represent and, our involvement at the Capitol and what we do for the commission and, just a variety of different things. And one of the most surprising statistics I think that I've run into when you give people, and they have this vision. Some don't even know that you have to have a license to go do something. But when they find out that you do, it's almost like it's a golden ticket that it's you're 100% successful. And when you give statistics about, and some of this can actually translate into a joking manner to those individuals. So I apply for an elk license. If I'm so lucky to get that license, the success rate on that license is roughly 9%. So that's 91% of the people that got that lottery ticket, but they still didn't get to be able to harvest an elk. Maybe they passed it up. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity. Maybe the weather set in. I mean, you got a specific season that you have to go within. So you explain this. Mm-hmm. So we have a 9% success rate on elk hunting in Colorado. That's resident, non-resident, private, public, bull, cow, muzzleloading, archery, everything. Guided, unguided. 9%. Imagine if you had to stand in line and wait for a lottery ticket for you to go to the grocery store. And then when you went in, you only could turn around and harvest 9% of the time because 91% of the time you were unsuccessful. That's what sportsmen and women do, but we pay for the opportunity to be able to do that. 100% of us do. And in Colorado and a lot of other states, you even have to pay to apply just for the sake of applying. Not only are you applying an application fee, you might have to buy preference points. You might have to, like in Colorado, get a qualifying license. That qualifying license might be a small game and a fishing license, might be $39 or $54 or whatever it is. You're paying for the opportunity to apply, and then you're paying for the opportunity to pursue with a 9% success rate. On deer, it's roughly 25%. On mountain lions, it's 19%. Bears are around 20%. I mean, you get into bighorn sheep, it's probably 50, and mountain goats, it's probably 60. Moose is somewhere probably in the 70s with very limited licenses that are given out. But stop and think about that and how that is conveyed to the general public that is so unknowing that when you tell them, would you be willing to apply to go to the grocery store, to go to Whole Foods, or to go to Safeway, or go to Albertsons or King Soopers or whatever? And then when you got in there, you were only successful 9% of the time. How many times would you continue to do that and pay into the system to do it? Well, they look at you and say, well, that's ludicrous. And so, well, it's not ludicrous for sportsmen and women because we're paying into the system for the opportunity to go. Now, it might look like if you look on social media or you talk to a specific group of individuals, or maybe it's just some really good guys that spend 30 days in the woods every year that have the opportunity to do that, they might be more successful overall. But nobody is 100%. Very few are 75%. Even fewer are 50%. The majority are 25 or less, but we're paying for that opportunity. So even the non-hunter and the anti-hunter can have wildlife on the landscape and enjoy it and know that it's there and it's being properly managed and taken care of because of people like us that are taking our dollars and our time and our efforts to be able to apply, draw, pursue, and then support the cause under the North American model in responsible wildlife management.
Yep. That, and on top of that, how horrible humans are at hunting. What is really good at hunting? Wolves.
And
You'll see
lions.
what happens to a elk population when you put a couple wolves in the area.
Mm-hmm.
You put that same amount of people, you're not going to have that decline. It's like
no.
Yeah.
And I would guarantee you that people want to see wildlife. They
Yep.
don't just want to see wolves. They don't just want to see mountain lions. They want to know in Colorado that all of their species of wildlife, 961 species of wildlife. I say this over and over and over. And if it becomes redundant to anybody that's listened to me before, I apologize. But that's part of the exposure and saturation deal, that where maybe somebody gets a point across that it's 961 species of wildlife, 78 game species, and that are being appropriately managed through our programs that we have. So everybody, resident, non-resident, hunter, anti-hunter, non-hunter, all have that, because it's part of the public trust doctrine of the North American model, and it allows us to know that it's being appropriately managed through a financing program that sportsmen and women have contributed to for the last 125 years.
Yep. And I will you know what? If people are getting tired of hearing that number, guess what? Go donate. He'll stop talking about it. Go take some action. Go take some action. He'll stop talking about it. But until then, again, he'll keep talking about it. So that, it's something that we simply need to go and take some action. Share it with other people. And you don't have to go out and, stand on the street corner and be that guy that's holding a cardboard sign talking about how wolves are destroying the landscape and all this stuff. You don't have to do that. But what we're asking is that you simply, one, get educated on what's going on, be aware of what's going on in your state. And again, there's people that are busy. Like, I've got 5 kids, I have a 9 to 5, and I've got a podcast, and I've got a bunch of other relationships going on as well. I don't necessarily have time to go and do what Dan Gates is doing. But what I do have time to do is go online, go donate, and talk to people around me about it, and also give to the correct groups that aren't just going to take your money and pretend to lobby and do stuff like that, because there are those out there as well, unfortunately. But find groups that actually are going to, they have proven records, they have results, they're driven by results. Go and donate to those groups so that they can take those resources and in turn go and do what they do best. Because again, not everyone has time. And I also understand that not everyone has a lot of money. But even $5, like if every sportsman, outdoorsman gave $5, that's a crap ton of resources that you don't currently have, right? So don't feel like your $5 to $10 isn't enough. It's more than what you were giving before, and it's more than maybe what your neighbor is giving. So whatever you can do, whatever it's time or money or both, I recommend you give, and you continue to have these conversations with people, because it is super important. I want my kids to be able to hunt and enjoy the outdoors. I want my grandkids to be able to do the same and continue on until the earth is no more. And the fact that they're trying to turn this landscape back into rewilding, it's funny because that same person that's saying that is going to go be a ski bum and happy about a new ski resort that's being built on some of the best land for the animals to live on. So they're kind of two-faced in that aspect. And you see that a lot too. If you kind of dig in a little bit deeper as to who's going for this rewilding stuff, I'm like, just go give up a couple of your houses, a couple of your cabins, give that back to the wildlife. I bet they'd be happy.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because it sounds like we're out here with a tin cup begging, borrowing, and stealing. But we're asking for people to help us invest in the opportunity to defeat an extremist agenda that can spread very easily beyond the state borders of Colorado. We're asking people to invest in something to where, if they have any connection to Colorado, whether they apply for points in Colorado, I'll get into that in a minute. If they apply for points in Colorado, if they've hunted in Colorado, if they want to hunt in Colorado, if they strive down the road and to turn around and ski in Colorado and come recreate here, we are up against the wall at this point in time, and being frisked to see what we have in our pockets, and what we're willing to give, and what we're willing to sacrifice, and what we're willing to turn around and maybe have taken from us. And I think that, people that look and go, well, this is just a Colorado-centric effort. 84 million people visited Colorado in 2022. 33 million people visited Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho combined. Colorado has more population that live here than those other three states combined. If you care about wildlife and resources, if you care about conservation efforts, don't let them take it away from us here and make it so easily accessible to take away in some other location for some other species or method of take or utilization of land and resource or whatever. We are doing the best that we can possibly do with what we have here. But because of the population growth, because of the change in demographics of what we've had in this state, I tell you what, it can happen in any other state just as quick. It happened here in about a 20-year span where we grew by 3 million people. And you turn around and look and go, this is not the state that I grew up in. This is not the state that I strive to recreate and advocate for wildlife conservation and resources in. Once those ignorant people become educated, they become our allies. But to do that, a catastrophic event like this, or what we've already been able to defeat at other levels, educates that population to where they're like, well, maybe it's not all doom and gloom, or maybe we shouldn't allow extremists to turn around and manage every single thing because they say it's wrong and somebody else science-based says it's right. We have the opportunity to plant our flag in the soil on this, Jonathan, and say enough is enough. And if the conservation-minded sportsmen and women around the state and around the region and around the country would help support this, we can thwart these efforts here. We can drive a stake through the chest of Dracula, and we can make sure that other states have the playbook and the roadmap to capitalize on our efforts here. Because if we can stop them here, I guarantee you could stop them anywhere. Because our state legislature is completely blue. We're outnumbered in the legislature. We're outnumbered in the commission. We're outnumbered in all elected positions. Why? Because ignorant people moved in to get away from where they were trying to get away from, and then brought some of their ideologies here and go, well, wait a minute. This is not really like I had it at home. But nobody else has given me any other options just because of the way the population has grown so exponentially and so quickly to the point to where the extremists go, this is our time. This is our effort. We should be able to do what we need to do because we're capitalizing on the stupidity of the people when we're saying we need to capitalize on the ignorance of the people, educate them, because what we have to provide from a conservation science-based management is things that they benefit off of, the things that they can capitalize off of for their livelihood. Just knowing that the landscape is appropriately taken care of and managed.
Brief interruption. Just want to remind you, if you're listening to this in April, all the way through the end of April, we're doing the Dark Energy giveaway, hundreds of dollars worth of gear that I'm giving away to you through the partners, people that I trust, believe in the company and the gear. Go check it out. If it's May, I also have a giveaway going on, so check that out, guys. I want you to know that I'm giving back to you as you continue to help grow the channel, the YouTube channel, the podcast, if you're listening on the audio-only version, the Instagram, as I'm trying to bring you good guests, good gear reviews. Check it out, guys. The link's down below. Make sure you go over there and get entered. With that being said, let's get back into the podcast right now with Dan.
Whether they want to hunt or whether they don't, just knowing the fact that science runs our conservation efforts, and hunting and fishing and trapping are part of that management decision. Without that, you have government agencies and officials doing the same thing that sportsmen and women are willing to provide funding for, as opposed to taxpayers hiring people to go out and do the exact same thing that was bringing money into the economy, bringing money into the management, bringing money into people's livelihoods, bringing the food source. As soon as you bring the government side into all of that, the livelihoods of individuals and economy, local economies and municipalities and townships disappear. And so does the management objectives, because now it's up to the government to supply. And I think that's a piss poor way to manage our renewable resources, where the government decides what we do, how we do it, when we do it, because agenda-driven extremists decided that the formula that we had, the roadmap that we had, didn't work. We don't have a solution. We don't have an alternative. We're just going to get rid of everything, and we're going to let the federal or the state government mandate every single thing that we do for all things that we're concerned about. I think it's a piss poor way to take care of it, and I'm willing to plant a flag and stand up 140 years worth of efforts before, from our forefathers, the Roosevelts and the Pinchots and the Leopolds and the Giffards and the Hornadays and the Audubons. If we're not going to do that now, who's going to do it? Because as soon as you lose it, you have to go back and try to regain it. Let's not lose it in the first place. I think it's our duty to do this as sportsmen and women. We look for the support and the help from everybody around the state or the country. But it's our job. Perfect conservation is impossible, but conservation does not happen by accident. It happens through trials and tribulations and adaptiveness and nimble abilities for conservation-minded individuals to make things right. And if it's not, you go back to the drawing board and you make sure that you deal with the depredation issues and the climate change and the water and the land use and the habitat loss and disease. You deal with all those things. It's not a perfect solution, but you figure out a way to make sure that you're doing it for the best opportunity for the renewable resource. And I think that we as sportsmen and women are not stupid enough to watch it disappear and let the antis, the extremists, take it away in small little bitty incremental steps, no matter what method of take, no matter what species, no matter what state. I think we all come together and we put our flag in the sand and we say enough is enough, and we're not going to let you take it anymore.
Exactly. That's, it's something that people need to get passionate about. They need to appreciate the severity of what is happening. And honestly, I mean, I don't know how to explain this, but I basically picture the government as just a bunch of people up there, not all of them, but they're in their offices. They're so overwhelmed by these initiatives and things that are getting pushed their way. They don't even have time to read them. They get it sent to them hours before they're supposed to sign off or vote on them. Like all of these things that you're hearing about, I'm like, I don't envy that job at all. And I do believe that some of them, if not the majority of them, have their best intentions in what they've been provided. But again, there's a lot of ignorance involved in what's going on. That's where the lobbying efforts come into play, where you're genuinely letting them know, hey, this is what the people actually want. And this is what you need to be listening to. And that's a big deal, because I know obviously lobbying has a sour taste in some people's mouths as well. But in this case, it's something that you guys aren't necessarily trying to get money out of. You guys are just simply wanting to preserve our rights as citizens of the United States of America. And here in Colorado specifically, there's things that it should be science-based, not paper and ballot-based.
Exactly.
That's really what it boils down to. We already pay people. You guys obviously have a very large number of scientists involved in your parks and wildlife group up there, and that's awesome. That's really amazing to hear. It's really sad that people aren't trusting that opinion. But again, I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but not really. Those same people that don't care about what the scientists are saying would turn around and tell you, but these scientists say climate change, and they're being very picky choosy, almost, bringing back kids again. It's almost like being a toddler. They're trying to negotiate with a toddler because they're going to be picky choosy about what they want. And so it's either science-based or it's not. And right now your scientists are saying one thing and these people are saying, well, but another thing, and trying to bring it to the ballot.
And let me throw something out. I mean, we advocate wholeheartedly to follow the science.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree to disagree, but we all recognize what happened in 2020, 21, and 22 with COVID, with the pandemic. And everybody kept telling us, follow the science, follow the science, follow the science. Well, my perspective of following 125 years of science-based wildlife management is different than following science from 3 weeks ago or 6 months ago. And while I complied with the science component on a variety of different levels, I had questions, but I was willing to do some sacrifices, because I thought that we take what you know, but what we know now maybe wasn't as solid as what we were told.
Right.
But looking back, we're looking back and saying what was right or what wasn't right. Show me what wasn't right about the North American model of wildlife conservation over the last 125 years. And for somebody to say it's wrong, show me where it was wrong. Because right now, going back to the pandemic, we can say what was wrong and the things that were right. maybe the things that were extreme. Okay, so that's one form of science. And a lot of people that say follow the science turn around and say this is the way you had to do it then, but now they're questioning what was done 2 or 3 years ago. Show me what was done wrong over the last 125 years on the North American model. Show me what's wrong about responsible wildlife management.
Yeah, and on
they
that
can't.
on that note, there's two things I want to hit on there, but with the COVID thing, versus this, the scientists in the Parks and Rec aren't getting a raise because you guys passed this. We'll just go with that.
Yeah.
And then with the North American, conservation model, prior to that, it was drive across the West and shoot whatever moves. And then prior to that, it was take all the buffalo and run them off a cliff, and we'll use what we can, and what we can't, oh well. And then if you show people the numbers from those two time periods of, pre-white man moving across the West, and then the white man moving across the West and destroying a bunch of wildlife, and then creating the North American model of conservation, the numbers have exploded. It's crazy to see. And it's not just a maintaining, it's the fact that it has improved all wildlife across the board, not just elk, deer, and the things that we enjoy eating, but also predators. All of it has been held in balance. And for those out there that are Christian, I firmly believe that God put us on this earth with the animals, but he also said, take dominion over the beasts and the things that are in the water and the air. And I'm going to mess up that verbiage, so excuse me for the Bible thumpers out there that know more than me. But he put us on this earth to manage that. And saying that the wildlife is going to manage themselves, to me, is anti-Christian, because that's what we were put here for. So all of that, if you want to go to that extreme and you want to go to the face side of things as well, that's another big reason why we need to step up. Instead of just saying, let wildlife manage themselves, they don't think the way that we do. And also follow the money. If the money is going, like right now, every time you buy a gun, every time you buy ammunition, and I want to say archery tackle, fishing tackle, things like that, there's a percentage of that goes directly to conservation. So you mentioned, you're paying to apply, you pay for the opportunity to pursue, and you still may not ever get anything. Then you're paying, for those bigger hunts, people are buying new archery equipment or new rifles, more ammunition. They're going out and practicing, hopefully. They break some arrows, so they're buying more arrows. Like, all of that contributes to the government. For people, like, it's an entity that is, we're providing that money to through making those purchases.
Which then turns around and comes back into the state. And I've had these discussions with people. They're like, well, Big Brother just continually takes it. We're taxed on this and taxed on that. And I'm like, the Pittman-Robertson Act of 1937 and Dingell-Johnson of 1953 take 11% of it's an excise tax that goes to the federal government. And then that federal government money is then annually distributed back to each individual state, depending on the amount of licenses that they sell and the population of that particular state. Colorado gets about $30 million a year back into the general fund that goes into wildlife management and natural resource conservation. Other states, it might be from $5 million to $40 million, depending on what they get and what they don't get. But that's money that everybody contributes in. And not only do the sportsmen, the hunters and anglers contribute, the target shooters contribute a significant amount of that money just to be able to go out, and because it has to do with guns and ammunition. There's programs that have been implemented over the course of the last 100 years that go into this conservation effort. I know people that do not hunt, that do not support hunting, that kick in money to that pot, that are griping about kicking money into that pot. But then when you explain the whole process of where money comes from and how it's done and where it goes, they're like, well, I had no idea. They're anti-hunting, but they have a firearm. They're contributing to the cause to help support the hunting and the fishing conservation efforts, but they don't fully understand the circle of life when it comes into funding and how you have programs and acts and legislation that's been set up historically to benefit. There again, I keep saying over and over and over, everybody, It benefits everybody. It gives the anti-extremist the reason, and the only reason, to turn around and try to take away what we have, because we've created such a plethora of wildlife resources. I mean, you go back at mountain lions specific. In 1965, mountain lions were classified as a big game animal in Colorado. Prior to that, they were a nuisance. They were a threat to the livestock industry. People say, well, that was wrong. Well, look at the population density in 1900, 1950, and then up in the 1960s of how many people lived on the landscape and how many people lived in the cities. In 1900, the statistics say that 20% of the people lived in cities and 80% of the people lived on landscape. In 1950, it was 50-50. In 2000, it was 80% of the people lived in cities and 20% of the people lived on landscape. But wildlife had to adapt with some of that. 1965, there was 200 mountain lions in the state of Colorado, roughly. And you can't count every single one of everything.
Yeah.
2023, roughly 5,000. With regulated hunting over a 60-some-odd year period, 55-year period, that we went from 200 of a non-managed species to a managed species, and it's a big game animal that you have to be tested on, that you have to be certified on, that there's quotas and harvest models and objectives and very strict seasons and checking and tagging, and you have to get your meat processed for human consumption. All of that stuff plays into it, and we've got 4,800 more mountain lions on the landscape now than what we did then. That's with 55 years of regulated hunting to be able to turn around and get to that level. Who the hell in their right mind would be dumb enough, stupid enough, to try to take the bullshit from people that go, oh, they're just going to extirpate the population? Show me how we've done that. We haven't. And the facts and the data and the statistics do not lie. But it's up to us, as sportsmen and women, to make sure that that data and facts are out there. We talk to our neighbors. We talk to the congregation. We talk to the guy at the car wash. We talk to our coworkers. We talk to our family. Go to family functions over the summer and say, do you know about this? Because if you don't, educate yourself. And if you know somebody that lives in Colorado and you're not a resident, ask them if they know about what's going on in Colorado, and then educate them. Because we have the ability to change the momentum on messaging and technique of messaging, and given the facts and the data, we've got more stuff out there as a community than the antis ever thought of having, because they could sit and write down a bunch of BS on the freaking pad. We've got years of documents and study and compilations of information that have been put into one giant pot, one resource that's science-based, that the opposition wants to turn around and try to discredit because they want us off the landscape.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an interesting topic, because we're never going to convince the anti-hunter, right? Nope. But it is like what we said, it's all about educating the people that really genuinely don't know. They have no clue what's going on. And they just see these things. And obviously, I'm an animal lover. I was going to be, planning on being a veterinarian at one point in my life because I want to take care of animals. But people see these cute, cuddly animals, portrayed in, whether it be Disney or on Animal Planet or Discovery Channel or whatever, and they don't recognize all the time and effort that it takes. People go visit Yellowstone, for example. If you want Yellowstone to continue being Yellowstone, like, we can't just rewild everything. I don't even know what that term would constitute. Like, it doesn't make sense. What are you going to go, tell the black bear that he can be more wild now? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so, for anyone out there that's maybe wondering about it, I'd recommend that you go and check some statistics, some valuable resources, and Dan definitely provides those as well. I'll leave some links down below where you can find, like we mentioned, Howl, and remind me the initials for
CRWM, but the website is SaveTheHuntColorado.com.
Perfect.
SaveTheHuntColorado.com.
Yeah, and you can go find some valuable resources, guys, that will actually tell you good statistics as to what happens when, you can go find statistics as well as when you do just let things run wild and you're not allowed to hunt them or any kind of conservation whatsoever. Because again, we're not about, I personally have a gripe against what's going on right now with mountain lions in Utah. I'm not a fan of the fact that they're considered pests and you can hunt them whenever, however. I don't agree with that either. I think that there needs to be some kind of management plan, That was also one of those things that was just randomly thrown in and voted on, not something that was put forth by the DNR per se, the Division of Natural Resources. So, that's stuff like that. We need to keep our eyes open. We need to keep our ears open and listen and recognize, the things that are happening right now in Colorado can easily translate to any other state when someone gets a hair up their butt about some cute, cuddly creature that they don't want killed. We don't want that to happen, and that's what Dan is all about. And again, finding those other resources as well, local to you, contribute to this cause, but also find a group, conservation group close to you that is driven by results, not by appointments and money and all this other stuff, but actually driven by results that will help keep this from happening, because it's better to prevent it than to have to deal with what Dan's dealing with right now and his organization is dealing with right now in Colorado, because it, like you said, over the last 20 years, which you say quick, I say that's a long period of time that the little red flags could have been caught and stopped 19 years ago, 18 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. And now you're having to deal with this big old battle and giant, wave that's coming at you because it wasn't stopped 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I want to mention too, Jonathan, that we've got other issues that we're having to deal with just to show that landscape. We got the fur ban that I talked about, and it's within the city limits in the county of Denver, where they're trying to ban the selling of fur. But if you read the measure, people would think, well, it's fur coats. Well, I don't like fur coats. But it also bans the sale of cowboy hats manufactured with beaver felt. It's wild fur.
Oh, geez.
Fly fishing ties, the fly fishers, whether you sell the raw material or where you sell fishing lures and flies with wild fur, beaver, otter, deer, elk, everything, mink, muskrat, everything, you can't sell that. It also deals with the Native American culture. It'll shut down the Denver March powwow. It'll shut down the Denver Indian market. It has provisions in there to where the Native Americans can actually sell the product. But who goes to that to buy it? It's mostly people that are not indigenous or Native American. It also has a provision to where the Native Americans can buy the product, but it doesn't allow non-indigenous people to be able to sell the product. So it's a ban. There's also a slaughterhouse ban when they want to get rid of the largest lamb slaughterhouse in the country and make sure that they can't be in business. They've been there since 1918 or 1909 or something.
Wow.
They want you to not eat, not wear, not utilize, not hunt, not manage any of the stuff. And this is not a Colorado-centric issue. It just so happens to be that those last two measures are only for the voters of Denver to vote on. But those people can then in turn vote on the state issue that we're having to deal with the rest of the state on the mountain lion and the bobcat. People need to pay attention to what's going on. And people ask us all the time, well, when did that happen? How did that happen? Why did you let that happen? I'm like, I didn't let anything happen. It's just that this stuff continually surfaces, and we need to educate our peers, educate everybody that we previously mentioned, have them be lockstep in defeating these measures at all levels. Stop and think. You couldn't buy a flipping cowboy hat in the city of Denver with the Western National Stock Show there. You couldn't go to the Western store in Denver to buy a cowboy hat because it's manufactured with beaver felt. You can't buy a license to go take a chance on harvesting a mountain lion. 2,500 licenses sold, 480 lions harvested, roughly 5,000 in the state. Meets all the requirements of science-based wildlife management, 20% harvest success rate. You can't do that. You can't eat what you want. You can't wear what you want. This is an extremist agenda mentality, and they're spreading at every level that they could possibly spread on top of what we did in 2020 with wolf introduction. Don't let that happen here any longer, and don't let it happen in your state. Help us turn around and defeat these efforts.
Yeah, the same people that were wanting those wolves reintroduced are now complaining because they're eating their dogs.
Yep.
Weird.
Yep. We are in a trying time nationwide because of particular political agendas and extremist mentalities. And it has to do with public land use. It has to do with natural resource utilization, whether it's beetle killed or fire trees. whether it's wind and solar, whether it's gas and oil, whether it's water, whether it's wildlife, whether it's public lands and resources, whether it's habitat conservation. I'm not talking about all the stuff that just hits the infrastructure in the city, roads and bridges and schools and taxes and abortion and, equal rights and human rights. I'm talking about all the stuff that affects every single one of us from a natural resource deal. You like to go recreate? You like to go camp? You like to go hunt? You like to go fish? You like to go watch wildlife? Somebody out there doesn't want you doing any of it. And as last as I checked, public land is public land and public resources are public resources. And we better figure out a way to coalesce our efforts, commingle our resources, our treasure chest, our war chest, and help each state and help each effort. And I see the business side of the industry coming together. We just came back from the Western Hunt Expo. I was at SHOT Show. I went to Sheep Show. I had guys at the SCI, had guys at the National Wild Turkey. We were at the ISE Sports Show. The industry's coming together. The manufacturers are coming together. The organizations are coming together. We've taken donations ourselves on this issue from 50 states now. We have broke where we thought we were going to be at this level, but we need a significant amount of more money because the opposition is so well funded because they are coming from every single direction. And we need to make sure that we get the message out to our guys and say, we don't expect to be able to turn around and raise as much, but if we raise close to as much, we can advertise and we can target and we can message to the people that are going to check that box, help us send these bastards back to the hole that they came from. And don't let them come to your state, because we can help. If we're successful here, we can help build that coalition and that effort that we've actually created a movement that we didn't think it was going to get this big. We didn't know we were going to get this much support, but we have, and we want to capitalize on it, and we don't want to go backwards, and we want to make sure everybody's part of the victory, not part of the defeat. We want them to look in January of 25 back to November of 24 and go, I was part of that movement and I helped stop that. We don't want them to turn around and be in January of 25 going, well, they lost in 24 and I wish I would have done something.
Yep, exactly. It's always harder to get things back than it is to maintain them. It's always harder. It doesn't matter what it is.
You don't get back as much as what you had. You only get a little bit of it back.
Yeah,
it's never the same.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree with you more. So, guys, first off, Dan, thank you so much for taking this hour out of your day to come and talk to us about it, raise this awareness. And guys out there listening, I highly recommend you go down below, you check out the link. I'm going to leave it right there so you can go donate. You can go figure out whatever it is that you need to do so that you can be a part of this movement. Also, if I understand correctly, Dan, Howl is doing their email blasts as well to be able to help with this, correct?
Yep.
And so I'm going to leave that link. I'm going to leave that link down below so you can get in on that. If you guys didn't hear that episode that I had with Howl, I definitely recommend going and checking them out so you understand that they are a great group of individuals. Again, not in it for the money by any means. They're in it because they want you, your kids, your grandkids, and your great-grandkids to be able to enjoy the landscape and the wildlife that we have. So let's get together. Let's make this thing happen. Let's help Dan and his crew and just basically get after it, guys. This is what we want. We want to maintain our rights. And if anything, get some of them back, but at least maintain what we've got and not let the anti-hunting agenda push forward, because they're not just going to stop. They're really not. Again, they're just like that. I keep going back to the children analogy because being a dad of 5, I see all these things, and it's funny because there's a lot of analogy there. But basically, you give them a little bit, they're going to take some more. You think about it. You got kids, even if you don't have your own kids, you've been around kids, you give them one chip out of your bag, they want another one, right? They want the whole bag. And by the time you recognize that they're holding the bag of chips and you're like, oh, crap. That's
I don't
just
have any chips
how
left.
it goes.
Yeah. And we've got a chance. We've got a chance, Jonathan, with your generosity and many others, to create a monumental movement and an effort that people can really, not only say that they were a part of, but recognize the success of that. And there's nothing better than rooting and being on a winning team. And there's nothing worse than not participating and then essentially being on a losing team. So not participating in this and other efforts is part of the problem, not part of the solution. Yep. We want everybody to be part of the solution, because we know that every sportsman and woman in the United States and in Canada has these issues that they need to figure out a way to participate and deal in some capacity at some point, at some time. Help us stop it now to where maybe we could prolong it in your state or your province, or, you know, just stop it altogether to where it's not as easily accessible to the antis to be able to turn around and do what they want, when they want, how they want, where they want, with whom they want. Exactly. That's not what the model was created for. I don't think that's what sportsmen and women want. And I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to continue to have this message and ride everybody's coattail, because we couldn't do it on our own. And the success that you guys and everybody else are giving us is going to help us be victorious on November 5th.
Yep, 100%. So guys, get out there, help out. I'm going to leave the links down below. Thanks again, Dan, for your time. Everyone out there, guys, I expect that you guys go and give, help however you can, so that we can keep this movement going forward. With that being said, guys, as I always say, get out, live your life, and love it. All right. That was a great conversation there with Dan. Absolutely loved sharing what he's got to offer. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you have a fantastic Saturday. If you're not able to get outside, I'm sorry. That's awful. Hope you're able to get outside, make some memories with loved ones. I'm going to be going up and doing an archery shoot with my family this weekend, and getting prepped to go out to the first Phorm games for May. So hope you guys have an outstanding, amazing weekend. Make some memories. Definitely go check out the links down below where you can get entered in to help with fighting for conservation, things that Dan and Howell are all putting together, so that all you have to do is just get entered so that you can help, or do a donation, monetary donation, time, whatever it may be that you have available. Get in on the good fight. And also, of course, if you're looking for any gear, if you're looking for nutrition, supplementation, check out the links down below. It does help support the channel as you go and you support the companies that I love and use and are partners of the show. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great weekend. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like, leave a comment, any questions, anything down below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.